Welcome to True Echo, where real stories echo louder than fiction. Today, we bring you a powerful and emotional journey about quiet strength, hidden discipline, and the moment everything changes. When a group of bullies targeted the fat kid at school, they had no idea he'd been training in silence for a year. This isn't just a story about fighting back, it's a story about control, courage, and the kind of strength that doesn't need to be loud. Stay with us. Everyone thought Terrence Mallory was just the fat, quiet kid who kept his head down and never spoke unless called on. At Clearbrook Middle School, that meant you were invisible, until someone decided to make you a target. And Terrence? He was everyone's favorite one. Every morning, just past the flagpole and under the broken fluorescent light by the front doors, Terrence would pause. He'd adjust the left strap of his backpack, glance up for a second, then look back down and walk inside. It wasn't hesitation. It was habit. Like bracing for impact. His sneakers always squeaked louder than anyone else's on the linoleum floor. He hated that sound. Hated how it made everyone turn and look before the first bell. That was when Eli Kramer usually made his move. Tall, sharp-jawed, with a smirk that never quite reached his eyes, Eli acted like he owned locker 207 and the entire hallway around it. And this morning was no different. "Yo, Tank!" Eli called out, loud enough for everyone within 15 feet to hear. "You make the hallway shrink, or is that just your gravitational pull?" Laughter rippled. Terrence kept walking. Next to Eli stood Julian Reed and Travis Lott, always in step, always ready to throw their 2 cents into the cruelty jar. Julian was wiry with sharp features and an unearned sense of confidence. Travis was broader, meaner, always the one to escalate. He played the role of backup muscle, even if his muscles were mostly bravado. "What's in the bag today?" Travis taunted, circling Terrence like a vulture. "2 lunches or 3? Terrence said nothing. Just reached into his backpack and pulled out his schedule as if their voices were distant radio static. His calm unsettled them, even if they didn't know it. Eli stepped forward and did what he always did, fake tripped, shoulder-checking Terrence hard. But this time, Terrence didn't stumble. He didn't even blink. He just stopped. "Oops." Eli chuckled. "Thought you were a vending machine." Laughter again. But this time, there was an edge to it. Attention. Terrence didn't look up. He didn't have to. He had already calculated everything. The way Julian always leaned into his right foot before throwing a cheap shove. The way Travis's voice got higher when he was nervous. The way Eli never acted alone. Terrence had been watching. Measuring. And none of them had noticed the change. The weight on his shoulders wasn't from snacks or books, it was from gloves, sweat, and something heavier than either, self-control. Because across town, after school hours and behind a faded pawn shop off Lake Street, there was a place nobody at Clearbrook knew about. Brady's gym wasn't fancy. The paint peeled. The floor creaked. But to Terrence, it was holy ground. And inside that chipped building was the only man who treated him like more than a joke, his Uncle Royce. Royce Mallory wasn't a man of many words. He let his fists talk for him. A former Golden Gloves finalist with a crooked nose and eyes like lit coal, he trained kids who had nowhere else to go and nothing left to prove but everything to gain. The day Terrence showed up, round-faced and wearing his uniform, Royce just said, "Tape your hands. We start with footwork." And that's what they did. 4 weeks. Footwork. Breathwork. Balance. "You don't throw a punch till you know how to take one," Royce said one night after Terrence flinched at a jab. "And you don't take one till you know how to stand." Now, nearly a year later, Terrence could move in the ring like the floor was part of him. He wasn't fast, but he was precise. He didn't waste punches. He didn't fight angry. He fought smart. At school, none of that mattered. Or so they thought. The jokes didn't stop. The names came daily. Tank. Tubbs. The buffet buster. But Terrence didn't snap. He didn't fight. Not because he was scared. Because he was patient. He used every insult like a rep on the heavy bag. Every shove like a round in the ring. He stored them. Counted them. Burned them for fuel. But on this particular Monday, the first after spring break, something changed. Not in Terrence. In them. Julian had new sneakers and a louder mouth. Travis had a fresh haircut and something to prove. And Eli. Eli was tense. Quiet. Like someone itching for a reason to explode. Terrence barely got 10 steps into the hallway before Julian was in front of him. Tank, they missed you at the vending machine, man. Sales were down all week. Terrence shifted his weight but didn't stop. Travis circled behind him, tapping the back of his head with a folder. Say something, Tubbs. Say moo or something. Terrence exhaled slowly. That silence. It made them itch. That was the moment Eli snapped. He shoved Terrence hard. Harder than usual. Terrence slammed into a locker with a sharp metallic crash. His elbow caught the edge. Pain bloomed instantly, sharp and raw. Blood ran down his arm. A quiet gasp from someone nearby. A girl from science class froze mid-step. Oh look! Julian shouted. We broke the vending machine. Terrence stood. His eyes met Eli's. Then Julian's. Then Travis's. You done? He asked, his voice low. Eli blinked. Julian's smirk faltered. You think I don't see how you wait for the hall to be empty? Terrence said, voice steady. Julian, you always shift left. Travis, you laugh louder when teachers aren't around. And Eli. He stepped forward just enough to make Eli retreat a half step. You think this makes you strong. But you only fight in packs. Then, he dropped his backpack. The thud echoed down the hall. The three boys flinched. But Terrence didn't move. He just stood there. Blood on his sleeve. Breath even. Eyes calm. He wasn't threatening. He wasn't violent. But he looked different now. He looked ready. And for the first time, they didn't know what to do. Nobody said a word as Terrence bent down and picked up his backpack. Not one insult, not a shove, not even a breath. The hallway, usually alive with noise, laughter, footsteps, had gone silent, like the school itself was holding its breath. He didn't rush. He didn't look over his shoulder. Terrence walked down that hall like he was stepping out of something old and into something new. Behind him, the three boys stood frozen, blinking in confusion at the boy they thought they knew. And for the first time, they didn't follow. Later that morning, Terrence sat in the nurse's office. Ms. Delgado, a gentle woman with a tired smile and a drawer full of lollipops, dabbed antiseptic on the cut along his elbow. What happened, sweetheart? Locker corner, he said simply. You sure about that? Terrence just nodded. There was no need to say more. Not yet. After school, the bus ride to Brady's gym felt longer than usual. The sun hung low and red through the dirty window, and Terrence's fingers tapped against his thigh with a rhythm only he could feel. Not anger. Not nerves. Readiness. When he pushed open the old metal door, the familiar sound of gloves hitting bags greeted him like music. The air smelled of sweat, dust, and leather. A couple of kids were already in the ring, dancing around each other, laughing between rounds. Royce sat by the wall, lacing up a battered pair of mitts. You good? He asked without looking up. Terrence nodded and started wrapping his hands. Royce noticed the bandage under his hoodie sleeve. He didn't ask. Didn't have to. He knew the signs. After a few minutes on the heavy bag, Terrence moved to the mitts. Royce held them up, calling out combos in his usual gruff tone. Jab. Cross. Hook. Step. Again. Terrence moved clean, sharp. His stance tighter than ever. His punches hit with more purpose. His breath synced perfectly with each strike. "You're mad," Royce said mid-combo. Terrence didn't answer. "You ain't mad at the punch, though," Royce added, stepping back. "You're mad at what came before it." Still, Terrence didn't speak. But his fist said enough. After a round, Royce lowered the mitts and gave him a look. "You're getting close to the line, kid." "What line?" "The one between proving you're strong and knowing you are." Royce dropped the mitts on the bench. "One's about control. The other? Ego." Terrence sat down on the bench beside him, unwrapping his hands. "I didn't hit them." Royce raised an eyebrow. "Even when I wanted to," Terrence added. A slow nod from Royce. "That's boxing." Terrence looked down at his scraped arm. "Doesn't feel like strength." "You will," Royce said, standing. "But real strength? Ain't about hurting back. It's about not needing to." That night, Terrence slept differently. Not deeper, not longer. Just, differently. His mind didn't race with comebacks he wished he'd said. His body wasn't curled into itself beneath the covers. He felt steady. At school the next morning, he walked the same path, flagpole, broken light, hallway. But everything felt changed. The same walls. Same lockers. Same kids. Different eyes. People looked at him a little longer. Not everyone. But enough to notice. Julian passed him in math class and didn't say a word. Travis leaned back in his chair and kept his head down. Eli stared out the window like he wasn't even there. And Terrence? He sat straighter. At lunch, he didn't eat alone in the far corner like usual. He sat at a table near the middle. Still by himself, but visible. Intentional. A few glances were tossed his way. Most didn't mean anything. But one stuck. Devin Reyes. A wiry kid with thick glasses and a notebook always jammed into his back pocket. He walked up with a tray, chewing on a grape like it owed him money, and plopped down across from Terrence without asking. "You really box?" Terrence blinked. "What?" "Julian told someone you train at that dump gym off Lake Street." "That true?" Terrence hesitated. "I think it's cool," Devin said. "I did karate for, 2 weeks when I was 7. Quit after I broke a lamp." A smile cracked across Terrence's face. Small, but real. "Yeah," he said. "I train." Devin grinned. "That why you didn't hit them back?" Terrence nodded once. "Didn't need to." "Dang," Devin whistled, impressed. "That's cooler than throwing hands, honestly." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Not awkward. Just calm. And for Terrence, that was new. But peace doesn't last in middle school, not when pride gets bruised and boys feel their power slipping. Later that day in gym class, dodgeball began. Terrence always hated dodgeball. It wasn't about skill. It was about who was fast, who was aggressive, and who the teacher didn't notice. Mr. Clay was half distracted with the stereo. The game was barely underway when Julian lobbed a ball, low and fast, at Terrence's knees. It hit hard. Terrence caught the next one with one hand. Didn't throw it. Just held it. "You mad?" Julian asked, arms spread like he was innocent. "No," Terrence said calmly. "I just think you're trying too hard." Julian blinked. "What?" "You want something to happen. But you don't really want to deal with it." Travis snorted. "Boy thinks he's deep now." Terrence didn't raise his voice. You hit me when I wasn't looking. You talk when the teachers aren't around. But you never say anything to my face. Mr. Clay turned around. The game continued. But the moment had shifted. Something inside Julian and Travis flickered, hesitation. And for the first time, Terrence didn't feel like he was trying to survive. He felt like he was choosing. That night at Brady's gym, Terrence moved like a machine. Not fast. Not flashy. But sharp. Focused. Every jab snapped forward with precision. Every step on the mat felt like it was counted before it landed. Royce stood at the edge of the ring, arms crossed, watching closely as Terrence worked a new sparring partner, a lanky kid from Merrillville with a quick jab but no control. Terrence didn't overpower him. He studied him. Measured his angles. Adjusted his rhythm. And when the bell rang, Royce didn't say a word, just tossed Terrence a towel and nodded. That meant more than any compliment could. You're seeing things better, Royce said later as Terrence sat on the locker bench unwrapping his hands. Not just the punches. The people. I'm getting used to speed not meaning strength, Terrence replied, wiping his brow. Royce gave a slow nod. Speed makes noise. Control makes history. Terrence leaned back. They're still testing me. At school. Royce sat beside him, grabbing a roll of tape. You expect that to stop? No. Then you better learn when words matter. Royce looked at him sideways. You said something back today, didn't you? Terrence frowned. How'd you know? Royce smirked. You move different when you speak your truth. Real talk leaves marks. Just like punches. Those words stayed in Terrence's chest the entire bus ride home. The next morning at school, Terrence didn't alter his routine. Still walked through the same doors. Still paused under the broken light. Still kept his steps even. But people noticed. There was a tension now, but it wasn't the kind that makes you feel hunted. It was the kind that made people keep their distance. Travis passed him by the water fountain, muttering, "Don't think you're better than us." Terrence stopped, turned calmly, and said, "I don't. I just know who I am." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't follow it up with a stare down or a threat. Just said it and walked away. But those words. They hit harder than a right hook. That was the difference now. Terrence wasn't reacting. He was choosing. But hurt pride doesn't retreat. It schemes. And Travis, in particular, was never good at letting things go. Friday started with a strange quietness. A fog hung over the morning like the air itself knew something was coming. Terrence noticed it right away, the way the hallway chatter dipped, the way Eli avoided eye contact, the way Julian hadn't cracked a joke all morning. Then Travis didn't show up to homeroom. Not a coincidence. Terrence knew something was off. But he didn't let it shake him. He kept to his rhythm, moving through the day like a fighter in the ring, eyes open, breath steady, waiting. The moment came during lunch. Terrence had just bought a small trail mix and a carton of juice from the vending machine near the gym hall. He was walking back toward the cafeteria when he turned the corner and saw Travis waiting alone. That was the first red flag. No Eli. No Julian. Just Travis. No audience. No laughter. Just a fake smile and nervous eyes. You got a second? Travis asked, casual like he was trying to pretend this wasn't a setup. Terrence didn't reply. He didn't break stride. I'm not trying to fight, man. I just want to talk. Terrence stopped and studied him. Travis wasn't smirking. He wasn't bouncing on his heels like usual. He looked like a kid trying to convince himself he wasn't scared. I don't owe you a conversation, Terrence said flatly. You right, Travis replied quickly. But you gonna give me one anyway. Then he reached forward, hand outstretched toward Terrence's hoodie. It happened in a blink. Terrence didn't punch. Didn't lash out. He stepped sideways. Fast. Smooth. His elbow stayed in tight. One arm blocked the grab. The other deflected the motion. Travis stumbled forward, caught off balance. And that's when Mr. Arnett, assistant principal of Clearbrook Middle, rounded the corner. "What's going on here?" Mr. Arnett barked, eyes immediately scanning the two boys. Travis tried to recover. "Nothing. Just messing around." Terrence said nothing at first. He just rolled up his sleeve and showed the fading bruise from earlier in the week. "I've been keeping track," he said calmly. Mr. Arnett blinked. "Excuse me? I've got it all. Names. Dates. What they said. Who was there. Teachers who saw but looked the other way. It's written down in my notebook. At home. My mom's seen it. So has my uncle." Travis took a step back. But it was too late. "All right," Arnett said slowly. "Both of you. Come with me." Terrence didn't move at first. Then, looking Arnett straight in the eye, he added, "I didn't hit him. Just so you know." Inside the office, Terrence laid it all out. Calm. Focused. No anger. Just facts. He didn't embellish. Didn't try to win sympathy. He just told the truth, quietly, but with authority. Travis got 3 days of in-school suspension. By Monday, Eli and Julian had been pulled into separate meetings with the school counselor. Parents got involved. Teachers were asked what they'd seen. Some told the truth. Others stumbled over excuses. And Terrence? He walked back into that school not with a swagger, not with a chip on his shoulder, but with something harder to describe. A presence. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was control. Word spread faster than wildfire. By Monday, Clearbrook Middle wasn't buzzing with rumors, it was simmering. No announcements had been made. No official changes. But every student knew something had happened. And depending on who you asked, Terrence Mallory had either knocked Travis out with one punch or threatened to press charges with a stack of evidence. Neither story was true. But Terrence didn't bother correcting them. Because this time, the whispers didn't shrink him, they made room. In class, teachers started calling on him more. Not out of favoritism, but like they'd finally noticed he was there. Like they suddenly realized he wasn't invisible after all. He still sat in the back row, but now, when he raised his hand, people looked. Julian passed him by the library and didn't speak. Didn't even lift his eyes. Eli transferred to a different lunch period, on his parents' request, Terrence later learned. Travis had gone quiet, like a dog that bit too many times and finally got the leash snapped back. The table Terrence used to sit at alone during lunch. It had a few more chairs pulled up to it now. Devin was always there, mouth moving a mile a minute about whatever obsession he had that week, comic books, chess tactics, or coding. He talked too much and too fast, but Terrence didn't mind. It was grounding. Eventually, others started sitting with them. A girl from English class. A tall kid from the basketball team who said he liked how Terrence didn't fake tough. They didn't talk about what happened in the hallway. Nobody needed to. Terrence had stopped disappearing. And that was enough. But what surprised him most wasn't how the kids changed. It was how the adults did. Ms. Brock, the science teacher who once looked away when Julian mocked him in her hallway, now paused to say, "Good job on the quiz, Terrence," when he handed in his test. Mr. Clay in gym class actually asked if he wanted to be a team captain one day. It wasn't much. But it meant everything. And back at home, his mom noticed it too. "You don't come home tired the same way you used to," she said one night, pulling off her apron after a long shift at the diner. "What do you mean?" he asked. You used to look worn down. Like school took something out of you every day. Now. You look like you know what's yours. He didn't know how to answer that. But he thought about it the next day while he was in the ring at Brady's gym, going rounds with Royce calling shots from the outside. The gym was buzzing louder than usual, 2 teens sparring in one ring, another pair doing mitts in the corner. Terrence ducked a jab, came up with a clean hook to the midsection, then reset without being told. He was flowing now. Confident. In control. When the round ended, Royce tossed him a towel and leaned against the ropes. You don't punch like a middle schooler anymore, he said. I don't feel like one, Terrence replied, sipping water. Royce cracked a peanut from a jar near the bench and chewed slowly. You know, I never cared about medals, he said. Even when I fought out of state. That stuff never stuck. Terrence glanced over. What did? Royce looked at him. How I carried myself. I walked in the same way I walked out, with control. That's what stays with you. Terrence nodded. He understood now. Back at school the following week, Terrence was walking down the hallway when he saw a 6th grader cornered near the water fountain by 2 older boys. They weren't hitting him. Just crowding him. Blocking his way. Laughing. Terrence didn't yell. Didn't bark threats. He just walked over. Stopped a few feet away. Arms crossed. Silent. The boys looked up, saw him, and moved away without a word. The 6th grader looked up, eyes wide, and said, "Thanks." You good? Terrence asked. The kid nodded fast. Terrence gave a small nod back and walked away. Because sometimes that's all it takes. Just being seen. Just being there. That's what strength looked like. Not the hit you throw, but the space you hold. That same afternoon, after social studies, a girl named Lena Wyatt caught up with him by the lockers. She was quiet. The kind of person who moved fast and kept to herself. But she slowed down for him. I heard what happened, she said softly. That was smart, writing it all down like that. Terrence shrugged. Help me stay focused. My brother went through something like that, she said. But he didn't say anything. He just stopped going to school. Terrence looked at her. I almost did the same. She smiled, a soft thing, barely there. You're tough. He didn't grin. Didn't puff up. So are you, he said. And he meant it. Because real strength? It sees itself in others. And knows when to speak it out loud. The days rolled by, and with each one, the air around Terrence changed. Not drastically. Not in a movie-style way where the underdog suddenly rules the school. But in a real way. In the way that students glanced less with mockery and more with curiosity. In the way that teachers paused just a moment longer before passing him over. It wasn't fame. It wasn't even popularity. It was presence. And with presence came responsibility, whether he asked for it or not. At Brady's gym, Royce pushed him harder now. He didn't say it, but Terrence could feel it. Tighter mitt drills. More intense footwork. Sparring partners who didn't hold back. Every mistake Royce called out was smaller, more precise. You carry yourself different now, Royce said after one long drill. I don't feel different, Terrence replied, catching his breath. That's how you know it's real. Growth don't shout. It walks. Terrence thought about that as he walked into school the next morning. The rhythm of lockers slamming, students laughing, sneakers squeaking, it was all the same. But he wasn't. That morning, he passed by the old crew, Travis, Julian, Eli, all spaced out now. Disjointed. Like a hive that lost its queen. They didn't speak to him. Didn't dare. But Terrence could feel the weight of their silence. He didn't need revenge anymore. That fire had cooled. What he felt now was something else, clarity. Later in English class, Travis sat in the back with his head down. Ms. Randall was talking about metaphor and meaning in literature, but Travis wasn't listening. His pencil scratched at the page without direction. He looked like a deflated version of himself. Terrence didn't feel pity. But he didn't feel satisfaction either. Just distance. Like he had climbed out of something the others were still stuck inside. At lunch, Devin was already waiting at the table, waving a chocolate milk like a trophy. "Yo, champ." Terrence shook his head, smiling slightly. "I'm not a champ." "You got a mean jab, bro." "That's champ enough for me." Lena slid into the seat across from them a few minutes later. She didn't say much, she never did, but she stayed the whole period, quietly eating her sandwich and occasionally glancing Terrence's way like she was still trying to figure him out. Terrence didn't mind. He was still figuring himself out, too. That afternoon, he stopped by the office. Not because he was called. But because he had something to deliver, a single sheet of paper. His log. The one where he documented every incident since the start of the school year. Names. Dates. Quotes. Places. Terrence had always kept it in a notebook at home. But now, after everything had calmed, he felt it needed to be seen. Ms. Jacobson, the school counselor, took it from him gently. She flipped through it slowly, her expression changing as she read. "You did all this yourself?" Terrence nodded. She looked up at him, eyes soft. This is powerful, Terrence." "I didn't want to be a victim," he said simply. She nodded. "You're not. You're a record keeper. And this? This might help more kids than you know." That's when it hit him. This wasn't just about him anymore. At the gym that evening, Royce handed him a new pair of wraps. Red ones. The fabric stiff but clean. "You earned these," he said. Terrence blinked. "I didn't win anything." Royce sat down on the bench, cracking peanuts again. "Sure you did. You won the fight that matters." "What fight?" "The one that don't end in the ring. The one that starts when nobody's watching, when the voices in your head are louder than the bullies outside. The fight to not become what they say you are." Terrence looked down at the wraps. Ran his fingers along the edge. "I used to think power was about being able to hurt someone," he said slowly. "About showing I wasn't soft." Royce nodded. "Everybody thinks that. Until they grow. I didn't want them to laugh at me anymore. And now?" Terrence thought about it. Really thought. "Now I just want to respect myself." Royce leaned back and let out a satisfied grunt. "Now you're talking like a real fighter." The next week, everything felt lighter. Not easier. Not perfect. But lighter. At home, his mom smiled more. Not because life had suddenly gotten better, but because she no longer had to worry whether school would break her son a little more every day. She even knocked on his door one evening, holding her phone. "I talked to the principal today," she said. Terrence looked up from his homework. "She said you changed the way some teachers look at bullying now. She said what you did might actually lead to new policies next semester." Terrence blinked. "I didn't do anything special." "You did more than you think," his mom replied, walking over to smooth his hair the way she used to when he was younger. "You didn't just protect yourself. You made them stop pretending they didn't see it." Terrence didn't cry. But his voice caught when he whispered, "Thanks." That night, as he lay in bed, he stared at the ceiling and tried to understand what he was feeling. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't pride. It was something steadier. A sense of becoming. And for the first time in a long time, Terrence Mallory didn't feel like he had to explain himself to anyone. He just was. By the time May rolled around, Terrence Mallory was no longer the invisible kid by locker 207. He wasn't the punchline in the hallway or the boy whose presence was a signal for jokes. He was just Terrence. And that, in itself, was a revolution. It didn't mean people stopped whispering. It didn't mean all bullies vanished. But the whispers had changed. They no longer stung, they echoed with curiosity, even a touch of respect. He wasn't feared. He was understood. One Monday morning, as Terrence stepped into school, he felt it in the air again, that shift. But this time, it wasn't about survival. It was about responsibility. Mr. Arnett caught up to him outside the science wing. "Terrence," he said, adjusting his glasses, "you got a minute?" "Sure. I heard from Ms. Jacobson about the documentation you kept." "That was impressive." Terrence said nothing. "We're thinking of having you join a student panel. Just a few kids who can help advise staff on anti-bullying programs next year. No pressure. But your voice could help us change a few things." Terrence's stomach twisted, not from nerves, but from disbelief. "I'll think about it," he said. "That's all I ask." When he told Royce about it later that evening, the old man didn't smile. He just nodded, handed Terrence a set of worn gloves, and said, "That means it's working." "What is?" "You. Carrying yourself like you're worth listening to." Terrence stood in the center of the ring and took a slow breath. Then Royce added, "You ready to compete?" Terrence turned to him. "Compete?" "Local youth tournament. June. Signed you up last week." Terrence blinked. "You serious?" "I wouldn't joke about paperwork," Royce grunted. "First real match. Opponent your weight. Not your level." Terrence didn't know what to say. He'd been training for over a year, but stepping into a ring for an actual match? That was different. "I don't know if I'm ready." Royce leaned against the ropes. "That's how you know you are." That night, Terrence sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the gloves Royce had sent him home with. He turned them over in his hands, remembering every drop of sweat, every moment of self-doubt, every insult that used to define his day. This wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about doing what he loved, and doing it his way. The next day at school, something happened that reminded him why this mattered. A sixth-grade boy, short, nervous, wearing a backpack that looked too heavy, was standing near the stairwell. Two older kids had him cornered, not touching him, but leaning in close. "You owe me," one of them said. "My brother said you took his charger." The younger kid stammered. I didn't. I swear." Terrence had been walking past, on his way to math, when he heard it. He didn't shout. Didn't puff his chest. He just stepped over, slow and steady. "Problem?" he asked. The older kids looked up. Saw who it was. Saw how he stood. The one on the left mumbled something about, "just joking," and backed away. The other followed without another word. The sixth grader looked up, wide-eyed. "Thanks. You good?" Terrence asked. A quick nod. Then the boy added, "They do this to me like every week." Terrence knelt slightly, just enough to meet his eyes. "You write it down." "What?" "Every time." "Where?" "What they said." "Who was there?" "Write it down." The kid nodded slowly. Terrence patted his shoulder. "Don't let them write your story. You write it first." That line surprised even Terrence. He hadn't planned it. But it stuck. Later that week, Ms. Jacobson pulled him aside after lunch. "Word travels fast around here," she said with a gentle smile. "Sounds like you helped someone again." Terrence looked down. "I didn't do much. You showed up. Sometimes that's more than enough." As the tournament approached, training intensified. Royce brought in different sparring partners, faster ones, taller ones, even a southpaw. Terrence struggled at first, especially with opponents who danced and jabbed without warning. But Royce kept him centered. "Let them waste energy," he said. "You study. Then answer." The week before the fight, Royce handed him a water bottle and sat beside him in silence. Then he pulled out an old photo from his wallet. In it, a younger Royce stood in a ring, gloves slung over his shoulder, face bruised, but smiling. "I lost that fight," he said. Terrence glanced at the photo. "You look proud." "I am. I didn't fight out of anger. I waited. Chose. Played it smart. That's what mattered. Doesn't it bother you? That you lost?" Royce looked at him. Not all wins show up on scorecards. That stuck with Terrence as he lay in bed that night, listening to the hum of the streetlights outside. His hands itched for the gloves. His mind ran through the motions: jab, cross, duck, pivot. But more than anything, he thought about silence. And how powerful it had become. Not as a defense, but as a declaration. He wasn't the same boy who had walked through the school halls just a few months ago. He wasn't defined by their names, their games, their jokes. He was Terrence Mallory. And he was ready. The night before the tournament, the house was quiet. The kind of quiet that settled in when nerves ran deeper than words. Terrence sat at the kitchen table, wrapping his hands the way Royce taught him, tight, smooth, deliberate. His mother leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching him not as a boy, but as someone she didn't fully recognize anymore. Not because he'd changed physically, though he had. His arms were stronger, his frame steadier, but because something in his eyes had shifted. There was a weight behind them now. A quiet confidence. A flame that didn't flicker when the world blew against it. "You ready?" she asked. Terrence looked up and nodded. "I think I've been ready for a while." She gave a soft smile. "I'm proud of you. Not for fighting. But for knowing when not to." He nodded again. That meant everything. The next morning, Brady's gym buzzed with nervous energy. The local youth tournament was hosted in a community center with faded banners and a smell of sweat and disinfectant that clung to every wall. The ring sat in the middle like a stage, with folding chairs surrounding it and parents clapping awkwardly between matches. Terrence was quiet in the corner, gloves laced, hoodie up, eyes closed. Royce sat beside him, chewing on a toothpick. "You nervous?" he asked. Terrence opened one eye. "Yeah." "Good. Means you care." He nodded slowly. "When you step in there, remember what we worked on. Don't waste energy proving something. You already proved it the day you didn't swing in that hallway." Terrence let out a slow breath. "Control," Royce said. "Over ego," Terrence replied. "Let him get loud," Royce added. "You stay sharp. You're not here to beat him. You're here to box." When his name was called, Terrence stepped into the ring. His opponent was a stocky kid named Malik from a gym across town. Same weight class, slightly taller, loud in the way some boys are when they're still trying to silence their own doubt. "Let's go, big boy." Malik shouted across the ring. "Hope you brought a helmet." Terrence didn't reply. He just bounced gently on his feet, rolled his shoulders, and looked to Royce one last time. The bell rang. Round 1 opened with Malik coming in fast, swinging hard and wild. Terrence didn't bite. He let him throw. Dodged. Blocked. Jabbed back once. Then reset. Royce had taught him this. Let the other guy spend his gas tank early. Malik kept pressing. But Terrence stayed on his toes. Footwork tight. Head movement clean. A jab here. A body shot there. Nothing flashy. Just smart. By the end of round 1, the crowd had shifted. They noticed something. This wasn't a brawl. This was a boy who knew what he was doing. Round 2 began. Malik was breathing harder now, sweat slick on his forehead. He came in again, this time with a left-right combo aimed at Terrence's head. Terrence slipped the first, blocked the second, and countered with a hook to the ribs. It landed. Malik staggered slightly. Royce shouted from the corner, "Now breathe. Stay calm." Terrence nodded once, then danced back, letting Malik chase him. He didn't throw haymakers. He threw questions, and let Malik answer wrong. When the final bell rang, both boys raised their gloves. Malik was red-faced and winded. Terrence? Tired, sure. But standing strong. The ref held up Terrence's arm. Winner, Terrence Mallory, by unanimous decision. The crowd clapped. A few kids cheered. Royce didn't say much, just gave him a nod, the kind of nod that meant, "That's what I trained you for." Later that evening, back at home, Terrence sat on the porch with his gloves in his lap. His mom opened the screen door and stepped outside with a blanket over her shoulders. "You did good today," she said. Terrence looked at her. "Yeah. You didn't fight like someone angry. You fought like someone sure." He smiled. It was small. But it was real. At school on Monday, nobody asked about the tournament. Not at first. But as word spread, a few kids leaned in at lunch. "You really won? By knockout?" "No," Terrence said. "By control." Devin high-fived him. Lena just gave him a nod, as if she already knew he would. And when he walked down the hallway past locker 207, Julian stood there, head low. Travis was a few feet away, writing something in a notebook. Eli wasn't around. Terrence didn't slow. Didn't stop. But this time, Julian didn't mock him. He just stepped aside. Respect had replaced fear. And that was the greatest victory of all. Weeks later, a new boy joined 6th grade. Overweight. Nervous. Shy. The kind of kid who used to be Terrence. And when he sat alone at lunch, Terrence stood up, walked over, and said, "You want to sit with us?" The boy blinked, nodded fast. And just like that, a new cycle began, but this one was different. Because strength, real strength, isn't about domination. It's about protection. And the quiet kind? The kind that doesn't need to throw a punch to make a statement. That's the kind that echoes. Terrence Mallory never needed to knock anyone out to prove who he was. His real power wasn't in his fists, it was in his patience, his discipline, and his ability to carry pain without passing it on. As Royce once said, "Power's not in your hands. It's in what you choose not to do with them." If this story moved you or reminded you of someone struggling in silence, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe to True Echo for more powerful stories that speak truth and inspire change.